From trading is just emotional. Pretty much someone told me, and I think it applies to trading, and it also applies now further to businesses. The highs and the lows. Don't ever get too high and don't ever get too low.
Kevin Diemar, he is a Wall Street trained trader who became VP of sales at UnityJets before founding UnityJets.
Know your customer. In my case, typically they were very successful, so there was data or information available. Take the 5 minutes to do the research, know who you're sitting down with, try to connect the dots. You have to also not be afraid of the client. Just because the client is CEO of X or has a net worth of X, you still have to always be honest and transparent with the client. The truth will never hurt you. It'll sting at first, but clients can live with the truth.
It's really easy for business owners to look at their numbers and feel pain or feel pleasure from them, not using them as tools to make decisions.
You're going to have, especially in the game of very early venture investing, you're going to have some zeros. It's just going to happen. Whether it's the leader, the product, things are going to happen. So the idea is when you do have the winners to really maximize what they can become and let them go.
Was there something from your trading days, learnings and lessons from those early days that you've applied throughout your career and you kind of look back on and say, those are foundational learnings that I'm able to apply every day?
I would say synchronous, I think for us, that's worked is.
Welcome to today's episode of 5 to 50. I am super thrilled to welcome Kevin Diemar here. He is a Wall Street trained trader who became VP of sales at UnityJets before founding UnityJets. He turns UnityJets into a global asset-light private jet brokerage known for its white glove service. In today's conversation, we'll chart Kevin's move from the trading floor to the tarmac. We'll also dive into how he validated Unity's capital light model and kept cash flow steady in a volatile market. All lessons that any founder can apply while scaling. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So let's dive into the beginning. What originally drew a securities trader on Wall Street to the world of private aviation?
You know, I had gone back in between the two careers. I went to University of Miami and got my MBA. And one thing I knew from leaving Wall Street into trading is that I wanted interaction with people. I wanted to have human interaction. I thought that was my greatest skill set and what I enjoyed. And probably one of the things I didn't love about trading is that really it was me and the computer screen. So when I heard about private aviation, came from a middle-class family. I'd never really been around that type of wealth, but it intrigued me more so the people I'd have access to and be able to, develop real relationships with. Otherwise, as a young professional, never really would have got in front of these people. So the private jet for me was more the tool to reach these people. And it wasn't so much that I was this huge aviation buff. It was really just about the access.
Got it. Was there one moment that you said, you know what, I'm going to go for it. It's time. I want to scratch this itch. I'm really interested in the industry and, let's take a shot.
Yeah. At the time, the industry was still pretty young and very fragmented. And there was an up-and-coming company I had a friend who was working at. It was called UnityJets. And they were starting to make some noise in the industry. I was finishing up my MBA and I flew to Boston and met with some of the guys and they gave me an opportunity. And I said, look, I'm going to give it my best shot. And, I was one of the youngest sales executives at the time.
We'll come back to UnityJets in a second, but before we get into the details there, was there something from your trading days, learnings and lessons from those early days that you've applied throughout your career and you kind of look back on and say, those are foundational learnings that I'm able to apply every day?
From trading, trading is just emotional. So, pretty much someone told me, and I think it applies to trading and it also applies now further to businesses, the highs and the lows. Don't ever get too high and don't ever get too low. Business is going to have its ups and downs and you got to keep your calm in your nerves and that way you can do the best job possible.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think it's really easy for business owners to look at their numbers and feel pain or feel pleasure from them, not using them as tools to make decisions. So, how do you maintain that emotionless state when analyzing information or when deciding what direction you go?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's ever emotionless, and people like, oh, don't take it personal. Whether it was trading or in the aviation business, when it's your own business and you're putting your heart and soul and dollars into it, it is personal, and but you do have to keep a balance and you can't let that get you so heated that you're not going to make the best business decision, because ultimately it's business. You're trying to get something done and accomplished, and just have to keep your cool.
Got it. Do you have any tools or tactics that you continue to go back on?
My tools personally are when I feel I'm making it too personal. It's just, count to 10, take a deep breath, refocus on the issue at hand, and really try to attack it from a business that's less than emotional.
Yeah.
It's very simple. It would be like your mother back in the day telling you when you're going to take a test, count to 10, take a deep breath. And I think that holds true in business also. Level heads make good decisions, and emotional, sometimes you'll regret things.
Yeah, those small decisions compound, right? And so it's
They do.
important to keep a level head in everything you do because those things add up. Awesome. All right, so let's go to UnityJets. I believe you started in sales, right?
I did. Like I mentioned, I went up. I was one of the younger guys. I think that was a worry or concern. They're like, hey, you're going to be in the room with CEOs, portfolio managers, real estate guys, big developers. Was I going to be able to pull off this sale, which was a high ticket item, very high ticket item as such a young professional? And, I had good mentors over there. I listened. I really tried to absorb what these senior guys were saying, and it turned into a nice success story.
Did you suffer from, imposter syndrome early on, thinking through, your background, middle-class family, starting to hobnob and network with?
No, I've always had like the gift of gab and been able to have good conversations with those, even when I was younger, with people that were older than me. And I was always intrigued by business. So when I got the meeting, obviously the goal, if I ever went into someone's office, was to sell the product. But I loved hearing the story. Just like you're sitting down with me. This was pre-podcast days, but for me, that's what was exciting. I would, I'd tell my wife, hey, I'm going to meet with so-and-so. He's the CEO of this company, or he built this company. And that's what really excited me. Clearly, my job and the way I put food on the table was by selling the product, the aviation.
Mm-hmm.
But no.
But it was building those relationships, right? It sounds like you had your foundation in curiosity, looking to learn from your clients and their experiences.
Yeah, and I think clients, especially people that are successful, sometimes they love someone who's genuinely interested. Plus, if you do stroke the ego a little bit, they open up even more, and then what business can come from that as well.
Yeah. So, any tools that you looked to utilize early on, or things that you learned early on in your career from a sales aspect that founders and entrepreneurs that are still building their businesses can think through or utilize when they're going to work with their customers?
Well, I think know your customer. In my case, typically, like I said, they were very successful, so there was data or information available. Take the 5 minutes to do the research. Know who you're sitting down with. Try to connect the dots. So you have essentially these quivers or the arrows in your bag as the conversation or wherever the meeting goes. You're able to bring things up that they'll be really impressed that you knew. But you don't come out and say it all. You let the conversation happen. But I think you got to be prepared. I think if you go into meeting with somebody and there's information available out there and you didn't do your homework, shame on you.
Yeah, that's good advice. So let's talk about the actual clients and working with them. I'm sure they're very high demanding and have high expectations. What did you learn about managing expectations that could help other business owners in their approach to their customers that might have high demands as well?
Yeah, definitely a very difficult client. These are either very powerful people, very wealthy people, or both. Some have made their money. Some kind of were born into it and have taken that family. And they expect perfection. They're spending a lot of money. They're paying an extreme premium to the alternative, which is commercial. And they want things to go perfect. And the word no really isn't in their vocabulary. So you try to, look, we don't work. If things were perfect, I wouldn't exist. So I get to show who I am and what we're about when actually problems happen, because we get to prove that we can be solution oriented. But you have to also not be afraid of the client. Just because the client is CEO of X or, has a net worth of X, you still have to always be honest and transparent with the client. And sometimes that means telling them stuff that they don't like to hear, meaning, hey, I know when you taxied, the light went on. We're going to have to come back. They're going to have to run checks and see if that plane is safe to fly. What do you mean? Or, hey, you can't take off from Aspen. The winds are too high. What do you mean? I just saw 3 planes take off. Well, just because they did it doesn't mean it was safe. We're not doing it. And these are tough conversations, but I would say respectfully, you always treat the client with respect, but you can't be intimidated or afraid of the client just because who they are and the power that they have.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So you gave a couple of good examples there, but do you have a story of an early situation where you really had to define who you were and who you were going to be, or who you were and who you're going to be shined?
I guess early in my career, something that pops to my mind, there was a NetJets back in the day. So NetJets was who was operating all the marquee flights, and there were some issues going on with the union, the pilots union, and our clients were paying top dollar to fly on NetJets, but they were having so much labor issues that a lot of the planes were miraculously having small mechanicals or squawks, which didn't allow them to fly. And then it became a downhill cycle of, hey, clients, like, why am I flying on XYZ? I paid for NetJets. What's going on? So I had to, I listened to my bosses at the time and took their line. But also, you had to take some bullets to really look at the client in the eye, be honest, say, this is what's going on. They're going to make it right, which they did. I mean, it's a first-class organization all the way, but it was a bump in the road that we had to get through.
Yeah. And just be honest and clear and, control what you can control.
Definitely learned that if you try to mislead or aren't honest with a client, let alone the type of person I'm dealing with, which is a very sophisticated person, you're not going to win that game. It's just always best to be honest. The truth will never hurt you. It'll sting at first, but clients can live with the truth. If you mislead someone, that's only going to cost you a lot more.
I love that. So let's go to 2011, launch of UnityJets. What was the thesis there?
The thesis comes back a little to that story I just gave, but more than NetJets and the marquee card with selling the 25 hours on the NetJets product. And what happened was there was a real boom in aviation, and many times NetJets and other large fractional companies, you were buying their product, but demand on certain days exceeded supply. So I'm talking around any of the holiday weekends, Christmas time, New Year's time. And what would happen is NetJets would go out into the secondary market and actually charter aircraft. So the client would call, book their plane the same as normal with NetJets, but sometimes NetJets just didn't have the availability, but they did cover the flights for the client. I was young and hustling, and I was running to the airport all the time and meeting my clients, always excited to show them the plane. That was my 5 minutes to really spend with the client. Yep. So I would get there early. I'd see the planes. And what I was noticing is a lot of these planes, which weren't NetJets, which is what I was selling against really. Now I'm putting my client on, but I had no idea what this was costing, meaning NetJets. It wasn't costing me anything, but how much, but I knew what I was selling it for because I was selling a fixed rate card at a fixed hourly rate.
Yep.
So that's kind of when the light bulb went on. I mean, there was other things going on in my head. NetJets, marquee, great organization. We had territories, so you do better. They raise the quota, shrink the territory. Good luck to you. Keep kicking butt.
Right.
So I had the entrepreneurial itch. I'm like, hey, this is great, but this probably isn't forever. And when I saw this a couple of times, I said, let me get smart and really find out what's the cost of this. So that's when I started doing a little due diligence, getting quotes, finding out what things cost. And I recognized that on a lot of these trips, I could sell it to a client for 30, 40% less than what I was currently charging them at NetJets, and do that without the commitment, meaning you didn't have to buy 25 hours. You didn't have to have any rules and regulations and peak day stuff. Just call me when you need me. So that was the aha moment. My son was probably 1.5 to 2 years. So it's scary leaving a really good job with an industry leader, but I saw it as an opportunity to really do my own thing.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense and super exciting time, I'm sure. Nerve-wracking and scary.
For sure.
But were there any minimum viable metrics or metrics in your mind at very early stages where you thought, if I can sell so many trips in a short period of time, I got something here?
Yeah. I mean, my idea was, look, I was successful selling at Marquee and NetJets, and that was, again, the 1% of the 1%. And I said, hey, if I'm not selling a fraction or a jet card, there's that many more people that will just need to charter a flight here or there. So in my mind, at first, when you're starting, but the goals were very low. I'm like, if I could sell 5 trips a month, I can make X. You're averaging about 10% on the margin. This could be a good business. And then hopefully it continues to grow from there. And so the bar was really low. The overhead, as I think you may have mentioned, was very low because I don't have to own these aircraft. I'm brokering them all. And it's really relationship driven, both on the client side and the operator side. And if you have strong relationships on both sides, you can be very successful in this business.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the model a little bit. By being asset light, you don't have this capital commitment, but you can utilize capital for growth or for a lot of different things. How did you approach using capital in those early days to scale or to invest? And what was your thought process, and how's that kind of thinking you to today?
Initially, the capital is really used to fund the trips because, we may book a trip. The operator wanted to get paid. I may not get paid till a day or two later. So it was really a revolving door of cash going out, coming in. And until we had the 6 months of, proven success, and now the capital has grown and there's additional money, I wasn't thinking of any kind of spend. As the business grew and became successful, then it became about who are the right people to bring in. This was proven. I'd proven that the model works, that customers were looking for this solution. And so it was bringing in some of the right folks on the sales and operation side, and then spending a little marketing dollars. Still to today, we're not a marketing machine. We use the word boutique because we really do focus on the relationship, the referrals, versus spending a lot of money and, on Google leads, and maybe 1 out of 100 works. It's just not our model.
Right. So you mentioned that you started to invest, bringing in people on the sales side, on the operations side. Was it just sales that led that decision making and figuring out how to support the clients, or how did you know when you needed sales, when you needed operations?
Well, as my plate, and it's any good broker, as you take on more and more clients, your time becomes less limited. And then if you don't have the time, the service levels are going to drop. So once I recognized, hey, I can't do it all. We started as a 2-man operation. We brought on a young guy from UM, and I said, hey, we're going to teach him from the bottom up. We're going to teach him how to order catering, ground service, how to source aircraft. And he was only doing that. There was no pressure to sell. He didn't have to perform. I had that under control. And once that was proven and it freed more time up for me, I had 2 friends actually. One worked with me at Marquee, and he went into something else for about a year or 2. And I said, hey, this is working. This would work for you. He joined our team, and that was almost instant success. He knew the business, and he started growing. Had another good friend who was actually kind of at a pivot in his career, and I let him know what I was doing, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to try it. I've got nothing to lose. And he's still here today also. So both success stories there. And that's really how the ball started rolling.
Yeah. Were there any times in those early days where you thought to yourself, something this isn't working? I gotta pivot, or I gotta change things up.
It always worked. Like financially, it always worked. Work, life, family balance didn't always work. And still to today, because of the job, the type of clientele we're dealing with, it's a 24-hour job. So I'm an on-call doctor, but I do nothing medically for anyone. But my phone, if I don't pick it up, they're calling somebody else. If there's a problem, I better pick it up because I got to fix the problem. So that's where I've really grown, and by hiring good people. And I think that's really the key to growth for any small company is 1, hiring the right people. And then 2, allowing them to run the ball. Don't micromanage. Give them some space and let them show what they can do.
Yeah,
There's a lot of talented people out there.
yeah. And so it sounds like you have strong relationships with your customers. It's been grown over a number of years. They trust you. You're willing to support them through difficult times. How did you foster that over years?
Well, I think 1, like I said, listening, trying to not only talk to my clients about, jets, but if they're planning a trip and they're going to Aspen, oh, where do you like to eat in Aspen? I take my family sometimes out there. Talk to them And remember, I've grown with a lot of my clients now for 15 plus years. They know about me. They know when I had children. And guess what? I've seen them have small children, go to college. And that's how the relationship has grown. And it's led to new business. Like a client who you have a true relationship with and it's clearly already flying privately may have other friends that fly private. So that but again, some clients, it's a little more transactional. They don't want the relationship. I'm their jet guy and that's it. And just like you have your car guy, they call me when they need me. They really don't care about my family and they don't want to talk to me about theirs. Yeah. That's okay. But then there are others that you really connect with. And I value those relationships a lot.
Yeah. You have to meet each client where they're at, right? And have
right. You can't force a relationship. And sometimes, look, some of my best clients, I rarely talk to. All their executive assistant. But there is that 1 or 2 times a year that we connect and that's fine.
Yep. Absolutely. Makes sense. So thinking back still early on, what was the point where you really thought, I got something here, I have product market fit, I'm going to scale, I'm really going to, lean in, bring on a couple extra people, maybe hire 2 people at the same time or 2 in a year. What was that look like? And how'd you look around and, what did that feel like?
I don't know if there was like one moment, but I think we had constant growth. And, when there was one time when one of the companies in our industry went out of business, left the business in the fractional space, and some good people became available. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I said, hey, I'm doing great. This side of the business is growing.
Hey, everyone. I want to take a moment to talk about how we at ProSeer are simplifying accounting and finance for entrepreneurs. Through our outsourced accounting, fractional CFO services, proactive tax planning, and accounting software implementations, we cut out unnecessary complexity for business owners and entrepreneurs. Our approach provides real-time insights, practical tax strategies, and a clear roadmap to help our clients grow their businesses. If you'd like to learn more, feel free to book a free consultation with me by visiting proseer.co. That's PROSEER.co. Now, back to the show.
Let me try to cherry pick really the 1 or 2 good people. And we did get 3 people from 2 different companies that are out of the business to join our team. And I think that really propelled us to the next step, from a real small business to kind of a medium player in our space.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of investment, time, resources. How did you absorb that, still being the lead salesperson, managing the relationships?
I mean, you have to make time for everything. Yeah. Again, first and foremost, it's the client. Then, I had Garrett, like I mentioned, young guy from UM. I'm trying to mentor him and grow him. So I was wearing many different hats. I always joke, people say, oh, you take president, CEO. I'm like, I also take out the garbage. I'm running payroll. I'm paying the taxes. So you're doing everything as a young entrepreneur. 1, to keep expenses down, but 2, you want to really know how the business works. So like, I want to be able to do every job at my company. I still want to be able to do it because if someone's out sick or something, someone goes down, I want to at least understand how that process works and that I'm capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Today, my goal is for me to be able to do everything, but to have someone who's better than me at each thing.
Right.
And hopefully we're there.
And so what are those metrics when you're looking internally that you're tracking to determine if the team's performing, if the business is scaling?
I guess I was lucky, but I had a good group of friends and I had 1 or 2 other friends that joined me. And I said, my motto was, we're adults here. I always said, I'm not going to micromanage you. There's going to be nothing on your phone that says, how many phone calls did you make? How many emails did you send? Because I have a very simple metric. It's going to be, how many trips are you quoting and how many new clients are you bringing on? The numbers and the results will speak for themselves. And I don't think that works for, kids being hired right out of college, but we were a little later on. And, I said, if you want to succeed, you're going to do what it takes, whether that means taking 10 meetings. You could be a guy who picks up the phone. Maybe it's sending out emails. Maybe it's doing events. Because there's no secret sauce. The secret sauce is hard work.
Yeah.
What works for me might not necessarily work for the next guy. You need to find, kind of your formula or your recipe for success. But the one thing it's going to include is hard work. So I didn't really measure, hey, how many calls you make? I've never done that. I've never micromanaged. I said, listen, you're going to do it. Now, if you need help or you want suggestions, we're here. But your day is going to be how you set it up. And ultimately the results are going to show.
Yeah.
And I think again, I think you do have to be a little more grown up to take that position. I don't think it's a job for a 21-year-old. Say, hey, go sell and just kill it. It takes knowing and dealing with the micromanager or the middle manager that you're like, is this person really adding value to my day? And listen, there's some great middle managers that do, but there's others that are, they have their goals to hit and they're just trying to fill your calendar with stuff that really isn't productive.
Yeah. And so in a sales first organization, it's pretty clear whether someone's doing well or not. Does that make it fairly easy to know when to make difficult decisions, or do they make maybe not so difficult decisions at that point where it's time for someone to leave?
Yeah. I mean, I think the people that need to leave or that it's not working out, they know. I mean, there's going to be people that hang on a little too long, and that's a tough decision. You have to have that conversation. But really, it's healthy for me and the business, and it's healthy for that person. There's no reason if something's not working after 18 months or 2 years, it's probably not the right fit. And that doesn't mean that I was the bad manager or the business owner or that they were the bad thing. It's just not right. Some relationships just don't work, and you have to end. And I think as a business owner, I've improved in that thing. Sometimes I may have held on because personally I like the person a lot, but ultimately it is a business. You do need to perform, and we're looking for growth.
Yeah. And so looking at those macro level numbers, number of trips, number of new clients, is that all you need to keep a pulse on the business? Are you talking, is there more qualitative things that you're talking to your team about to understand the future and plan for the future of the business?
It didn't go deep. Again, our metrics were really new clients. If you're getting new clients, you're doing something right. So it's really continue what you're doing. Now it's like, hey, there's a little get foot on the pedal, really hammer it down. If you're making calls to a certain industry and you're connecting with that industry, guess what? There's real estate developers in Miami. There's real estate developers in New York, Chicago. There's a big pool of real estate developers. If that's where you're hitting well, if you're good with the private equity guys, go after that. So we really tried to dumb it down and keep it simple, stupid, kind of.
Yeah.
If we have a formula that's working and the clients are one, giving us great feedback and they continue to come back and they're referring, that's all we have to do.
Makes sense. Do you have to track the macro environment at all? How the economy is going, those types of things? And does that impact your decision making?
I guess personally, I'm interested. I follow the markets every day. It's kind of in my DNA. When, I like to read the Wall Street Journal every morning and turn on CNBC like a lot of other entrepreneurs. My clientele that I'm going after, obviously at the very top of the food chain, they're some of the last people affected. And if you've ever flown privately, it's probably one of the last things you want to give up. So they're not as affected. And I think with our asset light model, even when the stock market has some blips and, goes down some, we haven't really seen big dips in our business. Obviously with COVID, there was one scare. I mean, I would call it the greatest scare in my career, was when the world kind of stopped and business stopped, and it turned into kind of our biggest success and most new clients because people felt the need now to try private aviation. But as far as macro environment, I mean, we're cognitive. We're watching what's going on. I'm not making huge decisions. Maybe if something in the world's happening, I'll say, hey, now's not a good time to advertise. Let's kind of lay back a little. Let's not get overshadowed by, something the president says or something like that.
Yeah, makes sense. You mentioned the word boutique early on in referring to the business. Boutique can often mean, under the hood, it can often be code word for chaotic. And so, how do you codify the white glove service so it's consistent across the entire UnityJets brand? And how do you make sure that everybody on the team is performing up to your standard?
Yeah. I mean, I think anytime anyone joins our team, we ask them to spend time here in our Miami office. I have an open door policy. I always say, hey, look, I'm not going to hand you a 40-page handbook that says this is the Unity way. But if you listen, my door is always going to be open. You're going to hear how I speak to clients, how I speak to operators, how I speak to different colleagues on the team. And this is how we do things. And, we lay it out very clearly what our expectations are. Like I said, I think earlier in the call, always being transparent with the client is a real key. important metric for me that, there's just not, there's nothing that can replace that relationship and being honest with the client. So that's something I always stress. I go, look, a plane can break. You're going to tell the client the truth, and we're going to say, hey, now you're going to see, we're going to get you a solution.
Yep.
And some of our strongest relationships have come out of difficult times,
Yep.
like a mechanical situation.
Right.
Because the client, they can't fix it. So they're nervous. They're going to call you. They're calling every 6 minutes. You got to manage them. And at the same time, you have to be coming up with the solution while keeping our safety standards and making sure we deliver what the client came to us for in the first place.
So we talked about trends in the economy, but let's talk about for private aviation specifically. What are the trends that you're looking forward to in the near future and the longer out future?
Well, there's been some things in our industry that have come, some apps, there's some ride sharing between major cities. There's some things that work. So it's not something I plan to get into, but there is a need, and there is a segment that works for it between major corridors like South Florida, between Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Boca, and say New York. The shuttles work, meaning it's semi-private is what I'd say. You're flying on a private jet. You're not setting the time. You're not setting the exact airport. So, it's kind of like the bus. You know where to be at what time, and it's a schedule. And yes, you don't have to go to the airport, but it's a much different experience than saying, hey, I want to leave from Opa-locka at this time and land at Teterboro at this time. So that's something that's out there. And I think that is going to take some business on certain trips. If you're going to travel with, say, 4 or more people, the economics start to make sense where, hey, maybe I should just get my own plane. Maybe it's worth that premium versus buying 4 seats on a shared shuttle.
Yeah.
The technology definitely come into our industry. There's been folks that have tried the app and the instant booking. A lot of time, it's almost like the bait and switch. They show one price, you go to click and book, and they're like, oh, that plane's not available because I'm not a data guy, but the CPI that they're pulling from that's showing that availability hasn't been updated properly. So it's garbage to the client. And, but there are guys, maybe it's not my demographic, that like the click and point. We've intentionally stayed away from the app. Developing and having an app is not that expensive nowadays, but you lose the relationship. Any opportunity that I have to text, call, touch, speak to my client, I want that. And in our business, if you replace it with technology, now you really can't commoditize what you are. The client speaks to me and actually knows what's going on behind the scenes, and I can have that conversation. They recognize, wow, Kevin does have real value. So that's why, even though it's out there, I feel, and again, I always compare it to that of a wealth advisor. There's, you can give your money to Goldman Sachs or to JP Morgan, or you can have an Ameritrade account. And I think back in the day, everyone's like, oh no, everyone's going to have an Ameritrade account. No, you still call with the, if you're a 20 million plus guy, you're still putting the most of your money with one of these private banks, not trading it on Ameritrade. And you're doing it because you want the relationship.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like that's the theme of this episode is the relationships and building your business on strong relationships, high customer service, high touch. So if you were to do it all again, from the very beginning, with a laptop and some small amount of seed capital, would you do anything differently?
I'm sure there's small things that I would change, but I think I went about it the right way without I think I'm the type of person, and even in my business, I've always been, hey, hit it single every day, single, double, single, double. I don't think you have to come out and try to hit a grand slam or a home run because there's just too many. You have too many zeros or losing clients. I'm all about, I may not bring in the most clients, but when someone comes into UnityJets, they're going to be with UnityJets for a lifetime and they're going to stay. And I try to do the same thing with people that work here. We're not somebody who's going to bring in 10 people to see 1 or 2 succeed. So, I'm happy with the way we did it. Obviously, maybe I would have scaled up a little quicker and taken a little more risk, hiring some more people and spending on advertising. But as they say, things have a way of working out, and I'm pretty happy with where we are.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's the concept that we're thinking about, every day in our business, and we work with a lot of clients on is, trying to figure out how to scale, the speed of scale, and the quality that you need to focus on maintaining as you scale. So it's great to hear from you. Let's wrap up with some rapid fire questions here.
Do it.
Is there one book that you consistently go back to for learnings and lessons, or that you give to your friends and colleagues that you reference often?
Old school book I read when I got my MBA was The Godfather. I think there's some really great lessons, business lessons in there. And I'd say I incorporate them daily.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, modern day, I just read Let Them. Think it's great for business, personal relationships, family relationships.
Is there any under the radar habits that you make sure that you do every day to stay sharp, physically, mentally, or get you ready for the day?
I wish I did more physical, play a little tennis, but mental. I think even as a kid, I can remember I used to go outside, grab the newspaper. Now I was only reading the sports page back then, but I did it every day. And I try to do the same thing when I get to the office. I'll go on CNBC, go into the Wall Street Journal. One, because I want to know what's going on. But secondly, there's always opportunities. I'll take a lot of articles. I'll feed them out to my guys. Say, hey, this guy just sold his business. Send him an email. Give him a call. So I think knowing what's going on, especially in your city, everyone, I'm not going to know the players in New York, but if you know the players in Miami and you're reading about them and you go to a nice restaurant, then you know who to say hello to and introduce yourself to. So I think, being knowledgeable about your market.
Awesome. And then any secrets of the private industry or private aviation industry you want to share with the listeners? Little hacks.
How many of them are my competitors?
That's right.
No, I mean, listen, I don't think there's a secret. And I don't think there's secret sauce to my industry or a lot of other service industry jobs. I think one, being really good and specialized at one thing. There's people in the luxury space, they're like, oh, we're a yacht broker, we're villas, we're jets. I'm like, great. That's not who we are. So I would say secret is, I think for us that's worked, is being really good at what we do, which is private aviation, and just hard work.
One more question that comes to mind is, you've been at UnityJets for 15 years now, and you're satiated your entrepreneurial bug, but to a certain extent. But I'm sure once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. How do you satiate that hunger to always kind of scratch that itch?
It's a good question. I think maybe 6-7 years ago, once the business started really doing well and spinning off cash, I was starting to say, hey, the business has enough money. What else can I do with this money besides the obvious, which is put it into, stocks and different funds. And lucky for me, a lot of my clients were clearly very successful. I knew about them. I knew they could afford to fly privately, and I would always develop a deep relationship. So then I would start asking the questions, hey, is there ever an opportunity to invest? Or, hey, if I was looking into a real estate fund, do you know someone that I could put $50,000 or $100,000 in? So I really tried to use that network again and those relationships to look for investment opportunities. And I started doing that. And then again, I had some private equity guys. I was interested in what they did. I'm like, this is interesting. I'd see their portfolios, or sometimes I'd be a very, very small LP because of the relationship. They'd say, yeah, you can come in. And I got the itch. And, I started doing it on my own, actually.
Yeah.
I started reaching out to founders, very, very early stage companies, saying, tell me more about your business. Are you looking for funding? And by doing that, I got involved in some companies, one in particular that when I got involved was a very, very small company, and today's grown to a tremendously multi-billion-dollar company.
Wow.
And, I think once you have that one hit, then you think it's easy, but it's not. But, that's something that definitely drives me. And a lot of my energy today goes towards that, looking for opportunities.
So looking for opportunities there, let's drill in a bit more. How do you identify the sectors or the industries that you want to specialize in, you want to focus? And how do you understand, where to isolate opportunities? And how do you actually convince a founder to take money from an angel?
For me, it's things that actually I would buy. So I'm not going into businesses that I don't know about or something that I wouldn't buy. The first company like that I mentioned, they're a clothing company. I bought a piece of the clothing. I loved it. I tried it on, and that's what led me to their website. Saw how small they were at the time. Wrote an email. I mean, this is really old school, but literally on their website, contact us.
Mm-hmm.
couple sentences saying, hey, I love the product. Don't know what your plan is, or if you're raising money, if you have plans to go big. Some people, maybe it was just going to be a mom and pop kind of store. And I got a response. And then it's just having that conversation. I think about timing can be lucky.
Yep.
But I always tell my people on my team, and I would say it in life, is you must be present. Like I always go back to the tickets, well, we used to go to raffles and it always would say must be present to win.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I believe you make your own luck by being present. So if you're looking for opportunities and you're putting yourself in positions when these things can really pop, that's how it happens for me. So I'm always looking for products that I would buy personally. And then I think about, hey, how big is the market? If it's a very specialized small, then I'm like, okay, cool thing. I like it. Probably no one else is buying it. But other items that have worked, I've invested in a sunscreen company, a beverage company, things that are very scalable if they're branded and the product is better than the competition.
I love that. And I see so many parallels in the story that you told about growing Unity and the connection you have with the customers. But finding the right customers is similar to finding the right investments, right? Connecting with customers that you want to grow with, and you see potential to be customers for a long time, similar to the investment thesis. Is that, do you see it overlap there?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say I bring it to the founder side. It's just like a customer. You're going to connect with certain founders. You're going to love their vision. Your personalities are going to match, and you're going to want to, something that's been exciting for me over the last 10 years is talking to other founders and saying, hey, even if it's not my industry, have we tried this? Or, sometimes they probably think that's the dumbest idea ever, but I keep throwing ideas. And I guess the ultimate goal, and it's happened to me in this one investment, is when they become so big that the founder now has no time because he's scaling a business, to such, it's worldwide versus, we're talking about, hey, can we open a store in this state or that state? Now we're talking about where in the world can we be?
Yeah, that's awesome. And so let's go to the sales pitch to the founders. Similar to selling a customer, you have to convince them to trust you, to buy a flight from you, from the Unity side. How do you convince a founder to take money from you from an investment standpoint?
For me, it would, I get back to my principles here at Unity is just being who I am, being honest. I never pretended to be a big shot. I come in, I set the proper expectations. I go, look, I don't know what you're looking for. I can, the early days, I could write a check, $40,000, $50,000, $100,000. And sometimes these very early stage companies, that can make the difference between 6 months more of survival or not. And if I believed in the company, I would write that check. So I think obviously you see if there's any doors I could open for them, you offer that if you feel you can actually help their business. And, and now it's gotten to the point where I have had a little bit of a track record and some success. I have friends now that want to come even in with me. I don't do it as a, separate LP or anything. We kind of just do it together, and I try to bring them in on deals. So a little pressure, but it's a lot of fun. And, but I think the founders, they recognize if they have someone who's not going to be disruptive, I'm not coming in to try to change their culture. I'm here really, I want to see you succeed and grow. I would like to, 10x plus my money, but I'm not here to disrupt their business and take it over. I think sometimes people, especially young companies, are like, what's their motive? My motive is really just to ride the wave with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so many angel investors do try to do that. They try to, put a small amount of money in and, take control things that are just massively disruptive. So it's important that founders take money from the right partners, and that partners really understand where they're wanted and needed and their uses in the business.
Yeah. And I think, I guess one thing I'd say on the private investing is just like your stocks or a real estate investment is you got to let your winners run. I think a mistake, and I used to always think about it as a kid, you'd see a stock like Microsoft for 20 years. You could have bought Microsoft all day and then it had its thing. So, just because you're in at X and now you can make 5X, which is a tremendous return. If the potential is 100 times that, don't sell. Obviously if you need that money, maybe you take some chips off the table. but you have to you're going to have, especially in the game of very early venture investing, you're going to have some zeros. It's just going to happen, whether it's the leader, the product, things are going to happen. So the idea is when you do have the winners to really maximize what they can become and let them go.
So it goes back to where we started the interview on not being emotional about it. How do you maintain that clear thought process around when to exit or when to hold?
I look at when there's opportunities to sell. A lot of these companies, this is pre-seed money or, early seed money. So no venture capital money is coming in. But when you do have successful companies and you see what I like to call people who are smarter than me coming in, they're not coming in just to take me out for the fun of it. They're coming in because they want to see 2, 3, 5x on their money. So just like in my early days, trying to go to my clients and say, hey, where can I invest? I try to follow people who are smarter than me. And I say that, kind of Jeff, but I really do feel like education, they're crunching the numbers. They're looking at thousands of deals. And if they're interested in this one, why is it? And then I say, okay, what are they coming in for? What valuation? And it becomes, hey, if you don't need the cash, whatever that number is, it's going to change your life. And if it's not, I would say they're coming in for a reason and they believe in you have a winner. Don't you believe in it so long, don't get rid of it so soon.
Yeah. Has your thesis changed? And if so, what are the factors that cause the thesis to change? And are they legitimate or are they emotional?
Correct. And look, it's hard sometimes if you see a company that you're in at 5 million and now you're being offered a buyout at 50 million. You're like, that's amazing. I never thought I was going to do 10x. But look who that buyer is. Like you said, has the thesis changed? Has the opportunity? Is it the same? Maybe it's 10x bigger than that. And you'll be kicking yourself if you sold it, 50 when it becomes 5 billion.
Yeah, I'm sure. I love it. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you or Unity?
My email address, they can email me, Kevin@UnityJets.com. Our website is UnityJets.com. You can go on there and see a little bit about us. And, I always say if you fly private, if you know anyone that does, you want them to take a look at us, I think they'll be very impressed.
Awesome. Kevin, thanks so much for the time today and all the lessons. Appreciate it.
Jeff, I appreciate it. Good talking to you.
Thanks for tuning in to 5 to 50. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with other business owners looking to grow. Do you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Connect with us on LinkedIn or reach out to us at ProSeer, where we're empowering entrepreneurs with real-time, actionable insights and financial infrastructure through smarter accounting, tax, and financial strategies. Let's keep this conversation going. Together, we'll help our businesses thrive. Talk to you soon.